Welcome to the Climate Hive podcast. What do you solve? Where we sit down with global game changers on climate. My name is Kevin Drolet, aka Kadro. I'm here with my co-host and co-founder Mike Higgins, aka Higo. Today's guest believes that temperature isn't merely something we check on a weather app. It's a critical layer of infrastructure and has come up with some really path-breaking ways to think and how we might be using temperature in the future. Jay Sadiq is the founder and CEO of FortyGuard, an Abu Dhabi-born climate technology company using artificial intelligence and high-resolution data to help cities, businesses, and infrastructure operators understand and respond to extreme heat in some particular ways we're going to learn about. And Jay has more than 25 years of experience across engineering, investment, and technology. He served as a Google appointed mentor and presented his work at global platforms, including COP29, Web Summit, Harvard, Vidya. Very smart person. So we're very excited to talk with you today, Jay. And I'm going to hand it over to my good man, Higo, to kick us off. And let's get this conversation rolling.
Jay, it's easy to kick off this because our first question is the name of our show. So we'll let you tell our audience. So, Jay, what do you solve?
AKA J is the temperature guy. So I solve for temperature. Um,
Nice.
I think we're working on a mission to bring temperature intelligence to the fingertip of everyone's use. And a reflection on that, or an example to that, is people use a lot of different apps. They make decisions every day, similar to which jacket to wear and where to run and how to run and all of that. I think there's a place for temperature intelligence in our business. We know temperature is a problem, it is a challenge outdoors, but there is no intelligence to solve for it across different platforms. Whether again, it's for individuals, for businesses, for engineers, or anything else. So bringing temperature intelligence to the fingertip of everyone's use mean, with one example, Google Maps will give people their next walking distance now, given that it's hot times, their next walking distance for a cooler route instead of a shorter one. So this application never existed. What we really needed is temperature measured at a human level, temperature measured every second. The intelligence of that hyperlocal measurement every 10 meters square. The intelligence behind that is the temperature routing model that is built on large temperature models that can speak to the prediction requirements of such an application. So what is it that we're doing and why we're doing this? Today, temperature comes from satellites and weather stations, right? So what it tells you, Kevin, is temperature every 4 kilometers square is probably 85 or 75 degrees Fahrenheit. But what's the temperature at your human level? Like, you are here. Why do you care about temperature at atmospheric levels, where even temperature starts to even, right? You care about temperature here at your human level. Where is this measurement of urban heat? And you and I know that if we go to a place of shade, or we go to a park, or we are on a concrete jungle where it's a highway and there is a lot of asphalt, there is a variation of temperature, right? And that could be up to 10 degrees or maybe more. So who captures this temperature difference for us? No one does. So we realized early on that the problem is with the data. There is no data for urban heat. And there are a lot of initiatives where they mount sensors on top of vehicles in different cities across the US, or on bikes, and they would let people go within a capacity of certain hours and certain roads. And obviously, they don't do it every day and they don't do it every hour. And they try to measure some temperature, and then they take that to build a heat map. But is it enough? Does it actually tell us everything? Does it measure temperature everywhere all the time? And we can't. So that's why we built our large temperature models, so it can predict the temperature everywhere all the time.
Moving beyond the environmental impact of being able to do that into the economic impact of being able to do that, right? Because on your website, I was noticing, you guys are talking about delivering this data via APIs, right? So you're building this layer of information. So APIs are how software talks to software, right? So give me an idea of the economic implications of your data asset and then where it's flowing, like what kinds of systems is it being brought into? Is this something that architects are evaluating? Like if you have a an empty lot between two buildings, are you measuring the heat signatures on those buildings to determine what kind of radiant heat you're going to be dealing with? I mean, let's take that one level further down into the economic implications.
Sure. So, first of all, the layer of our products are, like you said, API is one of them. We have a dashboard. Our dashboard isn't our business model. It's just our way of letting people interact with our temperature intelligence so they can
Right.
see how does it help. Then you have the API where our business model is, and we have small subscriptions for small and medium enterprises, and then we have the enterprise direction where cost would be different from one client to another. To your question, so when dealing with an urban planner, usually or engineering consultants, they would do the design, right? So let's say they took an
Right.
entire district and they did some heat assessment. So they're running wind simulations. Usually, the modeling that all of those companies do using different software platforms comes with data that is available probably for wind and for humidity because it does not change road to road, but temperature does. And when they measure it for temperature, they take a sample of 4 days for the entire year and they measure temperature at a district level. So basically, the entire district is 1 degree. So they don't have a lot of readings into that. Now, the challenge for a lot of engineers isn't only reading temperature for simulations and different other things, so they can measure it against wind and other solar and other parameters that they want to simulate. But the challenge as well is where can we do it for design so we can inform the right design when it comes to massing, when it comes to mitigation strategies like where to plant a tree, what should be the road size, how is this going to be thermally comfort for pedestrians who are walking within those communities, what would be the energy load for retail in that area, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things down to as well like the POQ, the bill of quantity, like what specifications do we introduce in terms of heat capacity for this materiality? So the engineer would put it on the tender, so the contractors would buy it from the right suppliers with the right specifications, where we can see a demonstration of how temperature could drop in that specific location, coupled with other mitigation strategies. So we can actually lower the temperature. And you can see how complex that is. But then
Yeah.
also it works for engineers where maybe there is already a designed or a built place, and how can we retrofit the place so we can cool it off, right? Cool it down. So what is today's temperature? What's the baseline, and how we can bring that baseline down? So what mitigation strategies again we can design and so on and so forth. And I think with a lot of engineers do this perfectly, by the way. And sometimes they do it so well, and sometimes they don't. Now, the challenge is how can you do it better, right? If you're not doing it so well, how can you be certain that your simulation is right? And then, as well, do you need a validation point? Like, do you need someone with the data is factual, right? It's not your opinion or mine, or how do you feel and how I feel. There are a lot of indexes out there, and they could be used with the right data to measure how is this thermally comfort, how is the UTCI, how is the PET, how is the other things that actually give us a measurement of temperature on that design or on that project, and so on and so forth. I think this is the area where FortyGuard usually gets involved. And this is the area where our API can be useful, but also our AI services as well can be useful to a lot of engineering firms and others. And think of it as well, Mike, not only communities or cities that we're building, housing projects and different other things. Think today about one of the largest or the biggest challenge, which is data centers, where almost 1/5 of our energy is going to go to data centers, right? So,
Right.
what's the impact of data centers today? How much is it overheating or heating, so it's impacting neighboring neighborhoods, right? Like the in close proximity to the data center. How can we build a cooler data center? How can we schedule um, workload if we operate different data centers so we can take inferencing for this specific workload to this destination where temperature is lower, which means the consumption of energy is going to be lower as well. And we can optimize our carbon footprint, right? And obviously do better to our climate. So there are a lot of decisions that you need the API, which is a layer of intelligence, to be coupled with all the other decisions that you are taking so you can make a better decision. That layer is what we're introducing through our API. That layer that could speak to logistics, that could be speak to insurance, so you can do dynamic pricing. You can onload or offload at specific times. You can choose the perfect routing for your vaccines that are time and temperature sensitive. There are so many
Oh, wow.
applications around where temperature intelligence could be used in our day to day, in our decisions that we make almost every hour, and that layer is missing. So our API is an incentive that you can add to your existing platform, to your existing dashboard, to your existing app, where you can unlock that, or you can add that level of precision when it comes to temperature to the decision that you are making, so you can just make a better one. And I kid you not, Mike, we're talking about millions of dollars, because this is
Mhm.
not just, nice to have. You're losing, and this is what we realize with a lot of businesses that we're working with, millions of dollars to temperature where cost is just increased and you can't do anything about it because what you don't know the problem. So if you don't know the size of the problem, you never know what's the size of the solution anyways, right? So temperature intelligence through our APIs informing those decisions means half of the solution now is understood, which is the understanding of the problem. And now we can introduce a solution, not us, but the people who are using this layer with their decisions, so they can introduce a solution that is effective for their business, that is effective for their carbon footprint and their scope 3 reporting, that is effective for their P&L, right? And their stakeholders and shareholders and all the other things that they need to fulfill in order for them to be a profitable business.
Yeah, Jay, I remember you telling us the story of how you got here, and I think that would be, super interesting. Um, I think because this sort of temperature intelligence is a new thing, and it's also because it's not like you say, it's not temperature like, hey, how hot is it outside? Oh, it's about 78 degrees or, whatever it is, right? But it's how hot is it, on this block of Broadway in New York City at this, at the ground level, 10 feet higher, 10 feet higher than that. So it's like exact location temperature, which is different. And I think we were wrestling with or thinking about like, well, how does that, like, what problems does that solve? But I was just reading this morning or, in my email feed or whatever, New York City is releasing the first ever urban forest plan, right? So they're targeting 30% tree canopy cover over 2040 in different boroughs, which is going to make a big difference, cooling New York City. And they built a lot of cities with no urban forest plan. Um, but it would seem that your technology would be super valuable because you'd be able to say, hey, here's parts of Brooklyn or wherever it is that are because of the buildings, the way that they're designed, are going to be really hot. And so this is where you should start with your urban canopy versus just, you know, a lottery or doing it randomly. Would that be the case? And then can you give us, would you mind telling us the story also of how did you get here? Like how did you get to this place of temperature intelligence?
So I think the story will give the answer to your question. We are solving for temperature, but interestingly, we started as an asphalt company. So I read an article that was published in LA about cooling LA. So now cities are actually, talking about this a lot. You said cooling Manhattan, there is cooling Riyadh, and cooling different cities. Every city is just starting a project to cool down. So LA was painting roads with a white pigment to cool down LA. And I was fascinated. I was like, why not we cool down Abu Dhabi, where I come from? Abu Dhabi is hot. We all know that it's hot. Roadway asphalt make almost 40% of the city, but we can't paint every road. So why not we just produce e-cooler asphalt? And I did some research, which took me almost a year, to find out that everyone is doing research around cooler asphalt without changing its color, but no one is building it. So I was like, FortyGuard is there and we're going to build it. That was the inception of the company. We started a material science company. Interestingly, we managed to build the solution. We managed to find a client. The client asked a very natural problem that we didn't have an answer for. They said, where are you going to put the asphalt? Because we have now cooler asphalt, and it was almost cooler by 16 degrees Celsius. They were like, where are you going to put it? We said, put it everywhere. And that was our natural sales question, sales answer, right? We just wanted to make more money. So put it everywhere. And they were like, no, you can't do that. Tell us where are the hotspots in the city. So looking at satellites level data, we realized that the entire city is 40 degrees Celsius, and we don't know where are the hotspots. So what we did, we mounted sensors the size of this on top of vehicles, and those were taxi and other shuttle cars. So organically, they would go around the city. And we took that data, which was live, and we put it on a map after some time. And we went back to the client and we said, look how heat is moving. It was like a fluid moving around the city from time to time. And it was showing the hotspots, but the hotspots were dynamic. They're not static. It's not like you have a heat map and you always know that this is the hotspot all the time. It's not. Hotspots, they move, right? So we took it to the client, and funny, the client was like, how much do you want for the map? It's like, what about the asphalt? So we pivoted completely to become a data company. And we don't do asphalt, we don't do material anymore. Not because it doesn't work, it's because we're obsessed with the problem. We're following
Yeah.
where the problem is going. And apparently the problem is with the data. People don't have the data to understand where is the problem, where is the starting point, right? You can't, and I say this a lot, it's like temperature MRI. You can't go to a doctor and them taking a picture of you from their phone and telling you, and God forbid, you have cancer. You're not going to accept this. Like, just because I'm coughing, you're saying that I have cancer. It does not work. But if they do an MRI and they, analyze everything, and then they come back to you and they tell you, yes, you do, and here is how we're going to start. Here is the solution, and here is your treatment plan. You are going to believe it. Why? Because they size the problem. And urban heat, to my understanding so far and experience, it's like cancer. You really need to understand it like an MRI. So you need a temperature MRI level so it can unlock what is exactly the problem, like the city of Manhattan. Manhattan is very complex. It's not only about the buildings of Manhattan, right? Everything is complex in Manhattan. Everything is complex anywhere. Wherever you go, cities are complex. They have a lot of different things. If you don't understand how heat is impacted or is impacting all of those elements, then you can never solve for the problem. So we introduced that information layer that we started, I said, a data company. We actually just started by collecting data. And eventually, because we had too much data we didn't know what to do with, we now became an AI company. First AI to manage the data that we have, and then AI because we want to make it efficient to inference all of this data to everyone. So we built our large temperature models that can predict the temperature and hopefully even predict them more accurately than a sensor on the ground can do, right? Physically. So I think our obsession with the problem and how it all started, and we kept focused around where is the client most painful problems are, and then following that is what shaped where we are today.
Man, what a story of a pivot. Love that. And then, sort of coming in a backwards way into this realization that the data was what was so valuable, right? Guys, and then you had the fortitude to go ahead and make that change. Because I'm listening, and one of the things that I've come to realize since we've started talking is this idea that heat is not uniform. Because walking down the sidewalk, I think, yeah, it's roughly the same temperature everywhere. This is not the case. So it's become so interesting. And Kevin, to what you were talking about with placing trees, I mean, the problem in that situation is where the hot spots, right? Put the trees in the hot spots. I would imagine, so it's different than we're going to place them every 25 meters or whatever. You got to move away from this idea of placing them in a uniform fashion and placing them specifically based upon, like you said, and I loved it, that temperature MRI, right? Where do we need to put these trees to reduce the overall heat footprint? That becomes something that's very fascinating. And I didn't think about the implications of something like that until we started talking. I'm like, where else would you get this data? These are big boroughs. These are big places, and temperature changes throughout the year. It's not the same all the time, especially in a place like New York where there's 4 distinct seasons. It does get cold there too, so it's fascinating to think about this data layer as this driving engine as an API inside of these applications. Very cool. So if you're wildly successful, I'm just taking this to sort of my own logical conclusion. What changes in cities around the world? Is it an overall reduction in temperature? Like what changes?
So we have to understand the current situation first, and then probably predict how things are going to shape and where we can be of value. First of all, there is more urbanization happenings, right? So basically, we're building more cities. People are moving from outside to the city, and the connection or the distance between what we call the suburb and the city center is just getting closer, right? So city centers are expanding. We're building more roads, we're having more buildings, there is more housing, population is increasing, immigration is happening. So it's going to places where city centers are and it's already hot and now it's getting hotter. What we can only predict is that temperature is just going to go higher. There's a metaphor that I use, and it is a funny metaphor, but I'd like to use it here as well. I don't know if you remember, Mike, when in high school I did that. The science teacher, she took a frog and she put it in boiling water, and the frog just jumped out, right? And then she took the same frog and she put it in a chilled water pot, and the pot, she kept heating up the pot, little by little. The frog kept adapting its temperature until it died inside. Now, again, it's a metaphor. Sometimes it just jumps out and sometimes it just stays. But I feel
Right.
like we are in a position where we continue to have our cities overheat and we keep adapting to this temperature. So we're building larger indoors, bigger malls. A lot of people are just spending time indoors. Man, we run marathons now inside malls. Like imagine a complete outdoor activity. Now it's done indoors, right? Climbing and different things. I feel like we're like the frog. We just keep adapting ourselves to the temperature, and I'm just afraid that we might die inside. And I think this is where cities are heading. So, what are we going to do about this? And what is the big picture for us? The big
Mhm.
picture for us is, first of all, because we're urbanizing, we want you to urbanize with FortyGuard. So you can urbanize cooler, so you can urbanize better, so you can urbanize with more resilience, so you can urbanize with profitability, but also you can urbanize making sure that you consider for the human thermal comfort and the impact of what your urbanization is going to bring to the surrounding areas and the larger ecosystem where you are. We want to work with governments so they can have the right policies in place. We want to work with governments so they can have the data so they can enforce those policies. They can set up specifications, they can set up ratings, they can do other things. We want to work with engineers so they can design better, right? We want to work with individuals so they can have access to the data where they can argue as well if this is right or wrong, because people's opinion matter, right? We want to take this to every system out there in order for us to bring a temperature visual experience to everyone. You said something interesting. I think that was in Kevin's question. The problem, Mike, with with temperature, different than anything else. Like if it's, let's say, now raining and there's a lot of water, so it's raining heavily and floods are happening. You can see the flood, right? So you can visualize it. You can look out
Mhm.
of the window and you will see that it's flooding and it's a problem. And so scientists, they can work with this mass of a problem. So they can visualize it, they can simulate it, they can do something about it. But can you look out of the window and tell me what's the temperature now? You can never do that. Temperature
Mm.
is not visual, right? And even if you want to know what's the temperature without a sensor in space, you'll have to go outside and you have to experience it over an extended period of time in order for you to say, oh, it's hot. But if you just go outside, you can't tell immediately that it's hot because you just came from a cold place, right? So, so that temperature visual experience is what we want to bring to the future of our cities. This is the big picture. Build things with an understanding of temperature, do things with the understanding of temperature, make decisions with the understanding of temperature, and then have a baseline so you can understand, are you doing well or not? Because cities are not like humans. It's the older they get, it doesn't mean that this deteriorates their health. They could get older and still get better, right? So from a temperature perspective, how can we do that? This is where FortyGuard wants to continue to stay and hopefully solve for the problem in every city across the planet.
And you see, Jay, you see temperature as being like something that will be a business in the future. I mean, there's already, the Weather Channel and, the temperature to some degree is, but you're saying like you think on a deeper level that we're going to be paying a lot closer attention to the temperature where it's at, where it's increasing. Is that the case? Like you see FortyGuard is kind of opening up a technology that doesn't exist right now, solving a problem um, that needs to be solved, but something that doesn't exist right now. Can you talk a little bit about how you see that entering the market, and where do you start? I mean, I could see like, hey, there's 1,000 places you could start solving problems. There's, in every city, but where do you start? How do you get started with this? And who's this most important to right away?
So, first of all, we're not a weather company, right? So it's not, you'll never see someone in PPC telling you temperature as per FortyGuard is going to be X and not Y. This is not going to happen. We're not a weather company, but we do believe that temperature intelligence is going to go into every business. Interestingly, Kevin, to your question, there are weather intelligence companies out there, and they're very
Mhm.
successful and they do very well. They service a lot of enterprises and so on and so forth. When they have a requirement from a client who's asking for precise urban heat data, they send their clients to us. And whenever we have a client who's asking about weather intelligence, so they don't just want temperature data, we send them to our weather intelligence partners. So it's not a competition. Everyone does something, we're doing something different. Now, this is one. Second, um, I think, Kevin, organically, we started working with developers. We started working with engineering consultants. And this is where most of our revenue came because it naturally speaks to them. They are doing a lot of heat assessment studies and they're looking at the thermal comfort level for humans, and they're looking at temperature or heat related specifications for materiality, like what's the heat capacity per kilojoule for a chair that we're going to put outdoors and how much we should
Yeah.
standardize, a material on the side road or sideway and so on and so forth. Naturally, this is where we're going to continue to grow because a lot of engineers just keep coming to FortyGuard. A lot of developers keep coming to us, and a lot of cities, whether they have chief heat officers, and this is not a designation that I'm making up, it's actually very common now in the US. There are a lot of chief heat officers. There are resilient directors. There are and so many other things. Um, those people are natural. They resonate naturally with FortyGuard. Now we are bringing it to other intelligence layers. So one, GIS. GIS is a very big thing in the world. where can we introduce temperature GIS to existing GIS platforms so it can be coupled with existing solutions? This is one thing. The agentic space now is something growing, so we're building our MCPs. Our MCPs will be able to connect with whatever layer of platform that clients have out there, so their agents can speak to our intelligent and they can unlock more information and actions out of our large temperature models. We're trying as well to generalize, and I would say this in the form of only temperature, generalize the use of our intelligence so anyone else as well can use it. It's like you just need the data layer, so insurance companies, logistic companies, data centers, or any other industry out there could use it so they can build with it. And one last thing, Kevin, we're now actually launching a hackathon where we want builders, so software developers, programmers, and the likes, to build with our solution. So we did a few hackathons before, and one of the things that I like, people can build things the way they find that is most useful to them. So there was this lady who built a dashboard that can inform her what would be the best route so she can walk her dogs and at what time she can start walking them on the day. And it would give her different options, like do this at 7 a.m. or do it at 8. But tomorrow 8 is not feasible. And then do it only until 7:30. And or at night you can do it from 4:30. She built this because she loves her dogs and she just wanted to make sure that they have a good thermal experience walking them outdoors. So again, temperature could be built for anyone. In order for us to feed that intelligence into her platform, we built our APIs so she can just connect with them. And we developed a startup program as well so she can get the access to the API at an affordable rate and even for free for the first 6 months so she can build and then probably commercialize that solution to other people who love their pets, right? So there are different ways to build
Mm.
things. We don't know them, but we want to build the intelligence in a flexible way that allows others to build with our solutions.
Got it. It sounds like it's just starting, right? These realizations and with your data, how it's a game changer, and I never heard of a chief heat officer before, you know, but I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And you gave some phenomenal examples like built for furniture and all that. And those are really good examples of how knowing that information can really change things. I read in Bill Gates' book too, some time ago, it was How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. But he talked about that the equivalent of New York City is being built every month in the world. I mean, right? The, it's staggering because the world is so much bigger than we think it is. You know, it's so much bigger than we can comprehend. And just to think about that level of urbanization as you were talking about, seems like your solution is super timely. So up to this point, with this very cogent solution that you're able to articulate, what has been your headwinds with this? Is it just getting people to understand the difference between your data and weather data? I mean, what do you hear most? It's like, you're not getting it right, but let me explain it to you.
Yeah, I think, like you said, just getting people to understand what is it that we do, right? It's still difficult because people understand weather, but no one understands urban heat because they
Yeah.
understand temperatures. And I think it's not difficult to explain it, and it's not also too difficult to understand it once we do. Like we're telling people, look, you're getting your temperature measurement at atmospheric levels, hundreds of meters above the ground, where temperature starts to even. And we see heads nodding. And then we say, okay, well, we don't care about that. We care about temperature 2 meters above the ground. I was like, yeah, that's true. That's where I care about temperature. This is where I do business. I'm like, okay, so the next natural thing is to tell them, okay, we built a model that can predict the temperature, right? And here is how you can use it. So we give them access to the temperature dashboard. And then they start using it. I came across a user who said, so they were buying properties. So they wanted to buy a house. The user has 4 kids and he had different properties. So he went on our dashboard he ran a heat intelligence report on each of those properties, and that made him decide which property he wanted to buy. Obviously, he had other considerations like price and
Right.
all of that. But when it came to even, like the price of this is 1 million and this is 1 million as well, and now I need to look into something that is comfortable for me, for my kids, for my wife. I can take a run outdoor most of the days during, and even looking at temperatures at high, like it's too hot or it's too cold. Then he picked his property based on our intelligence. Now, we never built it for someone to make an investment decision. But it seems like if we can put it out there, people will start to use it in ways that we never thought of. And I think this is
Yeah.
where our challenge is. How can we bring our intelligence to more people so we can
Mhm.
see what are they going to do with it, right? And eventually those people, they work for organizations. So they're probably going to call us and say, oh, hey, I work for this logistic company and we transport food or mayonnaise and it happened and they said, "Look, we want to build our next site, but mayonnaise is very temperature sensitive. Can you help us do a site selection?" So we have those three sites, analyze each of those sites to see how much variation we have in each of those sites when it comes to temperature, and then you can help us select the site. And then we said, "Okay, we can do that." And then they're like, "Okay, can you help us build our MEP?" So basically, our HVAC system will also have the capacity to handle all of those this fluctuation of temperature again, so we can maintain better operations and mitigate that risk. So again, we don't know. So the only way in order for us to understand, and this is where the challenge is, what is the best case or the best use of our intelligence? So obviously,
Mhm.
we want to succeed and survive as well. It's getting this to more people. And for us, it's a distribution problem. It's just how can we speak to more people and how can we get them to play with our intelligence is our number one challenge.
Yeah, that's what's fascinating that you've created a thing for others to play with, and then the market decides to some degree what are the ways, and then you obviously have some ideas, but your points in this discussion is, hey, there's more people that are moving into cities, so we know that. Cities are getting hotter, we know that. AI data centers are going to create all kinds of new issues with heat and energy, we know that. And so there's going to be more need for resilience to the heat. People are going to need, and so that spans such a large spans such a large scope, I guess, of how you build things for the future, where you plant things, where you live, like just and so what I'm understanding with FortyGuard is that this technology can be plugged in and you just figure out. And then I like the idea of people coming up with their own creativity for how they might be leveraging uh, temperature intelligence and how they're leveraging what you're helping them to understand in probably thousands and thousands and thousands of ways, but related to solving for resilience to the world we're coming into. Like we're coming into this much hotter world and that kind of thing. So that's and part of it. I'm reiterating some like, do you actually understand what this thing is? Are you still stuck on temperature intelligence? Like, I'm like, wait, how does this thing work again? But anyway, it's super fascinating. I feel like the conversation was so short, but we're coming to closer to our end of our conversation. I was just curious, you know, when we were at Trellis, where I met you at Trellis Impact. I was telling Mike, like, you had so many questions in the room. Everybody wanted to ask you questions. Like, what are some of the big questions that you're getting for FortyGuard as you go around and you're talking with people about this?
Um, how can we invest? It's probably
Yay, there you go.
that's a,
Yeah.
um, I think we get a lot of questions which we really enjoy around like our data. How did you build your models? How accurate is your prediction? We get a lot of questions, like probably you asked as well, like what's the application of temperature intelligence? Who needs it the most? How do you price it? How do you work with, who's your client, right? All those questions, and they're natural because it's not like we have something in Dubai called Kareem, and there is something in the US called Uber. So if Kareem is pitching Kareem in Dubai, it's very easy to say, do you know Uber? Yes, we do. Well, we are Uber, but for Dubai, and it's called Kareem. So it's very easy. And then people associate immediately, how does it work? What's the business model? How do you, right? But in our case, what can we say? Do you know what? Right? So I think people have all sorts of questions, and that's why you saw, Kevin, at Trails, that there were a lot of questions from everyone, because it's not really easy to just naturally bring the answer to everyone's mind about what temperature intelligence can be used for. And that's
Hmm.
fine. We like to be challenged. We like to build with others. We like to get questions that we never expected. And by the way, we also like to say we don't know, because sometimes we actually don't know, and the answer is something that we're working on to so we can figure it out, right? So we don't claim to be perfect, we claim to be on the right direction. We have a good sense of purpose, like good sense of direction. We know where we're heading, we know we're going to stick to it. It's just like Jensen Huang, when he started NVIDIA, he knew that it's a compute problem, and now he's building GPUs. But what he started with was graphics, so you can play on PlayStation. So you just need to have that good sense of direction. So we believe we have it. We're 5 years into it. I know NVIDIA is 36 probably years now. Um, so so there is another 31 years to prove that we can have a larger marketplace or market share, and we can lead this category where temperature intelligence becomes as important as energy, as important as many other things that are in today's market. Um, uh, and yeah, I think that's if you want to ask me a different question, Kevin, what question do I ask myself? Um, there's a lot of uncertainty, to be honest, in building startups, anyways, but also in building what we're doing. And all
Hmm.
of this uncertainty is answered by us having, again, a very clear direction. It's just knowing that we only solve for temperature. We know what's or how much of a problem that is, and make sure that we bring in everyone with Trello's Impact and any other platform that we presented in to understand the importance of temperature intelligence and bring them on board, like we're bringing you now, Kevin and Mike, to help us so we can take that message and take this product and take this impact to the wider space of this planet.
I think it was incredibly intelligent. You guys took this super open approach, right? Bringing this data in a way that it's open. It's like, you tell us what your ideas are, you know, because we've got all this data. We can do all these things, but you tell us the uniqueness of what it is you're looking for, and I bet we can deliver it.
The data collection, is it still via like cabs? Like how are you collecting? Does it still work that way? Where you showed us the little square box sensor. Does it typically still work that way, or are those sensors then do they go everywhere? How are you collecting the data?
So we collect data passively, so it's not necessarily only through us, through our data partners, and it's mainly through anything that moves. So think of like scooters. They have batteries, so there is a sensor. So now we're collecting temperature from the sensor that is in the scooter. Usually it's not on the surface, so it's near surface data, and we can collect that data, right? So anywhere where there is urbanization, there is an IoT, and there is something that move, is possibly a way for us to collect the data. So in order for us to do that, we'll have to partner with the OEMs, right? And the OEMs and the data collectors and others in the market would source this data to us, and then we could use temperature, and it's only temperature that we collect to build our temperature intelligence. But the interesting thing, Kevin, uh, the prediction of temperature with our large temperature models is becoming a lot more accurate than the temperature that we're collecting. So we don't need to collect more data. Now the challenge is how can we ground our prediction and have more control points that are accurate to just validate and verify our prediction in different areas. And let me explain this in another way. Temperature, when let's say you've installed a sensor. A sensor on the ground could be exposed to a lot of physical issues. Maybe you haven't maintained the sensor. There's a lot of dust on the sensor. Maybe it's 50 meters above the ground at the top of a building. It's not 2 meters above the ground. So it's dealing with different elevation requirements. Maybe it's always exposed to shade. So you put it between two buildings. So at that location, it's always cold. And there is a wind, corridor in that area. So it's even making it a lot more cooler, but you don't have a sensor in the opposite side of the equation, like in a place where it's asphalt and there is no wind and there is no shade and it's hot. So this sensor does not become a good ground truth, right? Because it does not represent the temperature everywhere across that point. It just represents the temperature at that specific geolocation, like to its meter level. But that's not accurate. So it is accurate if you just want to understand the meter square temperature at that temperature sensor. But if you want to understand it at a city level, now you need temperatures everywhere, or sorry, sensors everywhere. And that can never happen. So that's why we're saying that our temperature prediction now is becoming more accurate because of what it can unlock. It's not because the data itself isn't accurate. The data itself is good, but it cannot be distributed. So if you're going to build an understanding out of a single data point, then your understanding is wrong. And that's when the data becomes wrong. But if you're going to become or build an understanding out of our prediction that measures the temperature everywhere all the time accurately with ground truths that are everywhere in the city, then your understanding of temperature, the information layer, is accurate. And that's how you can build better.
An analogy that comes to my mind is Waze, right?
Nice.
For traffic. It's basically it's temperature. But Waze is based on data points of people driving around saying like, "Hey, there's a cop hiding over here," and on the
That's
side
right.
of the road,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Waze is built on cooperation,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Cooperation and participation. Yep.
yeah.
This is basically why Google bought Waze. They
Yeah.
wanted the data. And that's
Mhm.
why Waze still exists because it's still a data collection platform
That's right.
for Google, right?
Yeah.
And people like that sense of community. And also, it's important here, Kevin, that when you said there is a policeman hiding or whatever, you're you're not lying. You're an individual who actually saw this, and you reported that there is a camera in that place. And then Kevin or Mike was sorry driving behind you, and he saw that it is a camera as well, and he confirmed. Now this data becomes accessible to everyone because it was validated, right? So you're right. You need a lot of data to validate something, and you need it to be distributed so you can bring that information or that intelligence now to everyone to use it. And this is probably your example is just on point. Now I'm learning from this podcast. Your example is just on point because this is what we want to do. It's like, I'm not telling you don't rely on a sensor, and I'm not telling you don't rely on weather data. I'm telling you there is an accurate measurement of urban heat that today does not exist. We'd like to bring this layer, and you can couple it with weather or other data sets, but we'd like to bring something accurate to the measurement of temperature.
Jay, thank you so much for coming on the show,
Yep.
and you know, it's just fascinating what you're doing. I love it. I mean, it's just you're, and I love the starting with let's solve a problem, you know, versus let's create a solution, go find what problem then, and a tool that can be used by many people so that they can be. It's like you're giving people a guitar. Now go play your tune, go figure out your own tune with this. I've given you the guitar. Here it is. Go figure out your song. But very cool. Um, yeah, so we'll have to have a follow-up conversation and see how you do.
Thank you, Kevin. Really appreciate that. And Mike, thank you for your time as well.
I learned a lot. Very interesting. I used to be involved in a little weather company called Weather Labs, and this was in the late 90s. And it's funny because our two most popular products became our surf forecast because, the Coast Guard had sensors all up and down the coast in California, bottom to top. And we were able to get the wave height and wind temperature data to create a surf forecast. So we can tell you how big the waves would be at certain hours. And that became massive, right? The surf. And the second thing is we had a pollen forecast because there was a central place in the United States that
Nice.
forecasted when the pollen would start moving. And it showed up on DVDs. They would mail them to us, and we'd feed them into the machine. And we could do a pollen forecast. So if you were allergic to a certain type of grass, we could tell you when that grass would be in play. So it had nothing to do with weather, but the reason I tell you that is we were just open to new ideas, right? We were open to, because we considered ourselves an information company, not a weather company. We were like, people make decisions based on this kind of stuff. So let's help them. And what we did was we eliminated any idea of a barrier on that. We just went completely, what's the spectrum of stuff we could give people, right? Like, and this is why we won so many deals compared to our competitors. And eventually the Weather Channel came and bought us, because
Nice.
we were unstoppable. And it wasn't because we had good forecast data. It was because we were open to this idea of we were an information company, and people wanted to make decisions and we didn't know based on what. But we were always on the hunt for what else can we be doing? Because it was all interpretive, right? We could take stuff, interpret it, create a final product, and then put it out there. And it's what worked. But Kevin, you're right about waves. And if there was some way that you could get 30 million people that in random times their phones were reporting the temperature exactly where they are, you know, that's all Waze does.
Yeah.
All Waze does. Because the one thing that you were missing with the Waze thing is, when you go into a place where it said there was a cop there or there was a car on the side of the road, I'll get a text that says still there, right? Still there.
Yeah.
They
Question,
have a
right?
timestamp between when it was posted and when
Yeah.
I go by.
Yeah. Yeah.
Still
Right.
there.
Yep.
So they've got an army, they've got millions of people who, for no cost, like I don't charge for that data. I'm interacting with their tool, which is making it better for the community. That's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
We need more information around our weather data. That's why I mentioned earlier Jensen Huang. He is building the digital twin of Climate Earth. They call it Earth 2. So even NVIDIA is investing billions of dollars to understand the weather so they can simulate and unlock more information for everything where we do business today so we can have more clarity. There is one example, you spoke about Waze. There's one example that I'm also inspired about. There's a company called Prisometer. So Prisometer, they introduced a concept early on, even before the age of AI, where they said air quality is different from one city to another. And it's similar
Sure.
to what we're doing today. It's like temperature is different from one city to another. So what they did, and I don't necessarily have all the accurate information here, but they sold sensors. So communities, they would share revenue with them, installing sensors. So you would participate, install a sensor in your house, and basically collect air quality data for them, and they would sell this data to other partners. Now, the interesting, and speaking of value to weather intelligence and other intelligence weather-related data, they got acquired by Google for 200 something million dollars. And now Google reports air quality on your Google Maps through the burger button that you find at the top, if you didn't know. So they can tell you what's the air quality index in your location, right?
So good.
And it has a lot of other enterprise applications. But again, throughout time, just like you've experienced this, Mike, everyone experienced that there is something to do between weather and enterprise. And in my experience today, and that's why we're 5 years into this, and we're probably going to do it for another 30 years, is that I know temperature needs an enterprise to solve for it. The challenge is there. The enterprise is going to be massive because the size of the problem is going to be massive. And the more that intelligence is available and the more that it is accessible by others, the more that we're going to solve for problems and the more that we're going to be leaders in a category that no one else is solving for. And what I learned as well, because this is my fourth startup and I see a lot of investors out there, and I've been in private equity for 10 years, I learned that anything that is boring and sometimes niche is where your investment is going to make a lot of returns. Maybe it's
Mm,
going to take a cycle of 10 years, and I don't know how patient are funds out there, but it will return the investment, right? And it will capture a huge value because of how big is the problem. Now, we can't size it perfectly, but we know that it's there. And I think everyone eventually, you said you've been reading to um, um, a book for the founder of Microsoft, Bill Gates, and others. Everyone at some point in at some time is going to talk about heat, and heat is a problem that you will see over time. People are building for it, so it won't be just FortyGuard. And we're inviting others to do that because we don't want to be the only ones building in that space. But eventually, as heat continues to intensify, taking more lives, threatening our business, introducing more risk to our energy, and so on and so forth, you're you're going to face, I don't want to say a huge demand. This is to our advantage, but you're going to face a lot of problems, and you're going to need an intelligence to solve for it. So I hope FortyGuard by then will have the intelligence that will help people solve for all of those problems.
Yeah, me too.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, I have a lot more questions, but Jay, maybe maybe now I'm thinking like, so are you guys funded? How are you funded? Are you like commercial already, or how is that going?
Venue, and we have a lot of clients.
Good,
Um, and
Great.
we're um, we're doing well for our category and for our style.
good. I'm really glad to hear that. That's awesome. Well, I can't wait for you to IPO. I'm gonna get the early, investment in there.
A very hot
Just gonna
IPO.
Hot IPO. We'll know just how
just gonna
hot it
shell it out, Hondro.
is.
That's good.
Yeah. Uh, awesome. Well, thank you, Jay.
Well, cool,
Great.
Jay. That was
Yeah,
awesome.
that was so fun.